My name is Mike Hallowell. My Muslim name is Mikhail Yahya. I was born in 1957 in the town of South Shields, although I spent most of my formative years in the neighbouring town of Jarrow. I have a family. My wife and my 3 sons and I were all English.
On my way, fulfill my dreams. I couldn't say no time for change.
My journey to Islam began many years ago. Worked in the police service at the crime prevention department. I used to visit local communities, including the local Muslim community, and give them crime prevention advice. I always had a love for Muslim people. I found them very positive and very happy people, and I was always very defensive whenever I heard Islam criticised, even though I didn't know an awful lot about it. The second thing was that I had a son, Harun, who suffered from depression, and he used to drink and gamble, and he really had no purpose in his life.
What are we doing here, and where are we gonna go? It's like we just woke up one morning, and then it's welcome to the show. Don't ask any questions, just go with the flow. Make as much money as you can and try your best not to get broke.
And then he became Muslim and he stopped drinking, fighting, gambling, and this really made us wake up and smell the coffee.
I just need to know, is there more to the cycle than growing and getting old? Living and dying just to leave behind a happy home and a whole lot of property that somebody else is going to own. I just really need to know before the casket's closed.
We asked ourselves, look, what could have had such an amazing impact on our son? What is it about Islam that could change a person from such a negative way of living to such a positive way of living? If you ask my wife, what has Islam done for you? She will say, well, it gave me my son back. As an investigative journalist, I was investigating a case which involved a family who had been essentially plagued by something that they couldn't see. Outside of Islam would probably be referred to as paranormal activity. And this family had some sort of invisible entity in their home that was stalking them, and it was witnessed by police officers and other professional people, journalists, who just could not explain the things that they were seeing and hearing. And for the first time in decades, I was faced with this case and I just could not get to the bottom of it. I couldn't understand it.
Michael Hallowell, he's a very prolific author on the topic of the jinn. He wrote most of his books when he was not a Muslim. He's one of the most famous paranormal investigators.
I happened to be talking to a Muslim friend of my son's, Rakib, and I mentioned the difficulty that my friend and I were having with this particular case. And he asked me if I had a copy of the Quran, and I said yes, so I went and got it. And he asked me to turn to a particular chapter, or surah as they're called in Islam, the chapter of the jinn. And as I started to read about them, I realised that these invisible entities were responsible for a lot of the paranormal activity that we see in this world, or the inexplicable events that we're faced with. And not only that, they explained perfectly what was happening in this particular case down south that we were investigating. And I realised that, you know, for 1,500 years, people have been researching the supernatural, the preternatural, the paranormal, and all the time the answers that we've been seeking were right there in the Quran from the very beginning. The next thing that happened was that my father, who was 78, also became Muslim. He recently died at the age of 80, so he had 2 years as a Muslim. Well, it was my son. Okay, he became Muslim first.
And then he twisted me arm up my back.
That is not true.
became Muslim.
MashaAllah.
And then my father became Muslim.
Very
MashaAllah.
slow. Very slow on the uptake. Reading, you know, the Quran and the book about Muhammad.
Then, after that, other people in the family took an interest in Islam, and there was someone else reverted, and so it was like this chain reaction of individuals in the family, one by one. The reactions to our reversion to Islam have been interesting. In terms of my readers, people who read me newspaper articles, my books, the reaction has been extremely positive. We've had a tremendous amount of support, my wife and I, since we became Muslims. And there are organisations throughout the northeast, such as the Islamic Diversity Centre, which provides great support for new Muslims. Islam is a very strong, cohesive bond amongst the individuals who embrace it, and so you find yourself continually, despite the lack of alcohol and drugs and cigarettes and everything else, despite that, you find yourself continually being asked out to family gatherings, to restaurants. There's a very, very active social participation aspect to Islam.
والنازعات غرقا والناشطات نشطا والسابحات سبحا فالسابقات سبقا فالمدبرات أمرا يوم ترجف الراجفة تتبعها الرادفة قلوب يومئذ واجفة. I found my way, fulfill my dreams. I couldn't say, no time for change. I couldn't say, no time for change. I found my way, fulfill my dreams. I couldn't say, no time for change. I couldn't say, no time for change. I couldn't say, no time for change.